Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dharaka Vitarana. I am the moderator for the today program. Presently, Sri Lankan government is in struggle to cover the drinking water supply coverage. Nearly 80% of the population by 2025-24. The Water for All program was launched to achieve this target. In line with this government policy, IESL Kegol District Center decided to open up the forum for value addition to this national program. My dear ladies and gentlemen, you all are welcome to the program organized by IESL Kegol District Center. Now I want to introduce the expert panel who conduct today's program. The team consists of an expert practicing engineer and an energetic academist who can give the best blend to the program taste. Let me introduce them. Engineer Kishan Chandrasekhar. Engineer Kishan graduated from University of Moratuwa in 2008. And he got his master's from University of Peradeniya in integrated water resource management. He's a member of IWA, associate member of IESL, and is a professional engineer and practitioner in water supply network management with local and overseas experience more than 13 years. I know he has worked in National Water Supply Drainage Board also for a certain period in Greater Kandy Water Supply project. I also was there with you. And he's the managing director of Detect Asia Private Limited of Detect Group. Recently, I know he started the Aqua faculty. Actually, it consists of certain educational programs in order to enhance the knowledge, skills, and competencies of drinking water professionals as well as the technicians. Yes, that's about Engineer Kishan. Let me introduce our other resource person, Dr. Gauri Tanujadi Silva. Dr. Gauri passed out from University of Peradeniya in 2007, and she got her Master of Philosophy from the same university in 2013. And she got her PhD in 2019 from University of Tokyo in Japan. She's an associate member of IESL and member of Alumni Association of Department of Civil Engineering in University of Tokyo in Japan, and she's an associate engineer in Engineering Council in Sri Lanka and a member of Peradeniya Engineering Faculty Alumni Association, and as well as my batchmate, my dear batchmate. And you are welcome. You two are welcome, warmly welcome for the program. Engineer Kishan and Dr. Gauri, the screen is ready for you.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Dharaka. I hope everyone can clearly listen me, my sound and everything. Is that clear, Engineer Dharaka?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's very clear.
Okay. Wait, let me share the screen. I hope you can see the screen displaying today's topic. What we are going to talk about, the water supply engineer, 5 pillars for success. So let's start, since now we have already reached the time. And okay, since Engineer Dharaka has already introduced us, I don't take time to introduce about us because it's already done. Let's begin from this stage. I was able to find interesting definition of the engineer. It was very interesting. It is an organism who solves a problem you didn't know you had in a way you don't understand. This says, apart from that person that's for math than you ever knew. And here comes, there is possible use specifically the design, planning, construction, or maintenance of built or manufactured things using science, math, and creativity. So this is the definition of the engineer. I like this last word. Okay, we have this scientific knowledge put into practical use and designing, planning, construction, maintenance. But the last word, very important words, the creativity. This is very important. You will see when we going forward along this session also, how important to creativity for us. Okay. A lot of disciplines already, and the list goes growing on, because with the development of the technology and everything, we all know there are some interdisciplinary engineering sectors have been developed, like mechatronics, nuclear engineering, nano engineering. I mean, these are some kind of combination of these mainstreams, but with the development of technology and the other parallel technological advancement, some of these new branches are coming and still growing on. So coming to the main topic about what we are talking about, the water supply services. Here I would like to, okay, it's not only about public water supply. I mean, when we are talking about water supply services, the first thing come up to our mind is, okay, it's water board who supplies water for us. Okay, we have, that is the main part, okay, and we have several other services related to water supply service. We would say this industrial water supply for buildings, water supply for this heat, ventilation and air condition, and now refrigeration. So this is a growing new sector in Sri Lanka also. And for irrigation, water supply for built environment. This is also because now a lot of theme parks are in the world. There are a lot of water theme parks, so it requires a lot of engineering for the water supplying. So it's a kind of growing field, not only in Sri Lanka but also in the world, international level also. Okay, here comes the big picture. So we are talking about water. So if we are to deal with water, there's something we need to know and we need to follow. We all know that the amount of accessible fresh water amount we have in the earth is less than even 0.5% of the total we have. That is the reason why we need to use it wisely, and what we are talking about this management, because of its everyone knows that is a kind of finite resource. So we have the technology for converting the seawater into drinking water, but it's not so easy, and price is not so affordable, okay, when we compare with the other water sources. So that's why water management is very important. The composition of the categories in the water cycle can be varied, but as a whole, I mean, when you see this water cycle, the picture right side, I mean, we know this water cycle from the childhood. We are learning about that. We learn from the beginning, okay, the precipitation and the surface runoff and the rivers forming, and after that we extract water for the areas, and after that we have certain amount of wastewater. So the water cycle goes on in different categories. The amount inside within the cycle allocated for various categories will be varied, but as a whole, it's a kind of finite amount. This is why in the Dublin Water Summit in 1992, it was agreed to have a common water management principles. It is called Integrated Water Resource Management Principles, or Dublin Principles. So we need to know about this because it's very important if we are going forward. I would like to brief it very briefly. Okay, it says the fresh water is a finite and vulnerable source. So it understand, okay, it is a very okay, it's a finite. I mean, we know the amount we have is finite amount, so that is why we need to manage it. And the second, the water development and management should be based on participatory approach involving users, planners, and policymakers at all levels. So this is talking about it. I mean, the integration of the participatory approach. The integration, when we are talking about water, when we are taking the decisions and everything, we need to go for an integrated approach. It's not only us, or it's not only someone who use the water. So we need to take care about this one, or this also. And the other two, women play a critical central part in the provision, management, and the safeguard of water. And the last one, water has an economic value as well as it has a social value. So this is very important. It's not only, I mean, okay, in the early child days, it is said that, okay, water is coming from the rain. It is, okay, නිකං හම්බෙන දෙයක් වගේ අපිට හම්බෙන්නේ එක මුලින්. ඒක එහෙම නෙමෙයි. So that is what we need to understand here. It has an economic value. That's why we are investing amount of money to treat water, to safeguard the water. I mean, still it has a social value as well. So this is the 4 principles which we need to consider in terms of water resource management. Okay, so with this big picture, let's proceed about, okay, now who is the water supply engineer? Now we know who is the engineer, okay, and we know the services, different services we are providing related to water supply service, and we know what is the water management is. You put them all together, so water supply engineer, he needs to deal with these 3 concepts. He knows the engineering, he needs to supply the he needs to provide the services for water supply, and he needs to understand the water management principle. So this is the core of the engineering of the water supply engineer. In a nutshell, we need to ensure the water supplying with adequate quantity and required quality in a sustainable way. From the, I mean, you are the one who bridge the gap between the source and the tap. I hope the sustainability is not something strange for this audience. Simply, we need to find a common place. The solution shall be environmentally friendly, economical, as well as social viable. So that is where the sustainability is coming in. Okay. Let's go about the main topic. This is our main topic, the 5 pillars for a successful water supply engineer. This is the main topic. Okay, let me list out one by one. Okay, we have identified the first one, the planning and design pillar, construction techniques, operation and management pillar, management skills, toolbox. The first 3 pillars are technical and they are interrelated. Remember the task. We need to ensure the quality and quantity from source to tap in the process of water supply. So all the, I mean, coming back to the first principle, all the planning as well as the design must be addressed this requirement throughout the intended period. We call it design period. And when it comes for the construction, that means when the design elements are put into the ground, the water supply engineer has to have the proper techniques. That's the second pillar we are talking about here. In construction, you need to ensure the design requirement as well as O&M friendliness. The third pillar, the O&M, that is also very important, and it plays a major role here throughout the life of the water supply scheme. So this is how you run the business of water supplying from production to customers. So need to make sure the increase of revenue while reducing the losses. This is very important. The top three of these pillars, what we are talking here, the planning and designing, construction techniques, and operation and management, maintenance, they are technical pillars. But you have to have some other. You must have them in order to be excelled in the field. Technical pillars only would not be sufficient to become a successful water supply engineer. You need to have some management skills. It's a very important pillar which will keep you move forward efficiently and effectively. We can talk about in the coming slides. And the last one, the fifth pillar, the toolbox. This is what you need to have with your own toolbox, well equipped and ready to use at any time you want. Let's talk about them one by one. Okay. This is what I call this interrelationship between the three technical pillars. Okay, we will talk about one by one then. And I invite Dr. Gauri from this session onwards to take over, talk about this planning and design. Dr. Gauri, over to you.
Thanks, Engineer Krishan. So shall I share the screen?
Yeah, sure. I will stop it.
Thanks. Is it visible? Am I audible enough first?
Yes, yes, you are visible.
Is it in full screen mode, Engineer Daraka?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's start with planning and designing. So before moving into the planning and designing, I also wanted to emphasize the same thing what Engineer Krishan has mentioned. So purpose of the water supply scheme is, as you all know, it's to deliver water from source to tap or the source to consumer with appropriate quantity, quality, and with the pressure, right? So we need to maintain all these things when we need to have a good water supply, right? So in order to achieve this objective, in a water supply scheme, we have basically four main components, as you already know. They are source, treatment, storage, and distribution. First, you need to find a source to fulfill your quantity. You need to find whether that source is good enough to, capable enough to fulfill your quantity requirement. And then treatment is there to, as you all know, that almost all the surface water sources are treated. We need to do some kind of a treatment to maintain the drinking quality. So treatment is kind of essential component in drinking water supply. Then you can't just use the treated water to the distribution. So you need to store them. That storage should be capable of storing the whole amount of water which we need, and also the elevation of that storage should be elevated enough to distribute the water through the gravitational flow as much as possible while keeping the pressure at the tap in the required value, right? So finally, it's the distribution network. We need to design the distribution network in a way that the losses are minimum, and it should capable of keeping the pressure at the tap and all the other intersections and all the other connections in appropriate manner, right? Those things are kind of well-known things, right? So now we'll see why the planning and designing is important. We all know the available freshwater resources are very limited. but our demands are increasing day by day. So in order to fulfill that everlasting increase in demand, we need to manage the available limited freshwater resources. So that's the purpose of having planning and designing or the management of water resources when we want to use them for our purposes, right? So with that proper planning and designing, we can achieve several advantages. So basically, we can utilize the limited available freshwater resources in sustainable manner with proper planning and designing. Not only that, we can reduce the wastages and we can optimize the resources and cost as well. Generally, as Engineer Krishan correctly mentioned, when we think of planning and designing, we need to consider the construction phase as well as the phase. So with the proper planning and designing, we can have smooth functioning of construction. Not only that, we can have the smooth functioning of operation and maintenance. So also we can make sure that there's no missing items or no missing crucial steps so that we can easily schedule and make the program for our construction and also for our maintenance. So we can do our work within the given time frame. So with planning and design and management, we can have efficient and effective stream. So these are some advantages of having proper planning and designing. So since we are considering about our water supply schemes, you all know what's the most important parameter for designing, right? What's the most important parameter? So we are supplying. So we need to know the demand. That's the most important parameter in our process. So how to calculate the demand? So generally, if we want to design a water treatment plant, we need to first define its lifetime. Design life has to be defined. Then we need to calculate the population growth. So you know the population growth calculation, right? Generally, almost all the practicing engineers, you can calculate the population growth. You do the population growth calculations, right? So generally, we have to consider the previous census data, and depending on that, we can project the future population. So with that, you can have some understanding about the future population and their demand as well. So suppose you design your water treatment plant for 20-year design life, then somehow you have to calculate the population growth at the end of that 20-year period. So you have several equations and all that. I hope you all know those things. I'm just brushing up your knowledge about that. This is what we already considered. But we have to consider some other facts as well. So in order to calculate the demand, you need to consider the consumption changes with time. So what are those consumption changes? Is that mean like by year we change our consumption? That's not the case, right? So you all know, if you refer to this figure, you can see this is the average water use per person per day in different countries. You can see the topmost countries are US, Australia, Italy, Japan, Mexico. Their consumption is more than 300 liters per person per day. But when it comes to developing countries like Mozambique, Uganda, Rwanda, Haiti, Ethiopia, or Nepal, or some other country, their consumption is around at least 30 to 40 liters per person per day. So in Sri Lanka, it's around 75, right? So it's in between China and Bangladesh. So you can see the per capita water usage is kind of indication of the well-being of the people's living standard. So we have to consider those facts as well. The same thing happens with the rural and urban communities. You know that the luxury of the urban community is higher compared to the rural community. So with that luxury life, they need to consume more water. So when we calculate the demands, we can't just use a single value for all the communities. If it is rural, we have to use one value which is less compared to the urban communities. So something like that, we have to consider those facts. Probably sometimes you may have considered those things when you are doing your design calculations. Not only that, we have to consider the climate change impact as well. Generally, you all know now the climate is changing and it's kind of emerging topic for the past decades or so. So, you know, the temperature increases and precipitation changes, sea level rise or sea level increases. So those things are also affected to the day-to-day life of people. So that will affect to the water consumption again. So with the high temperature, the water consumption becomes high. With the changes of rainfall patterns, then again, there can be some drought periods and like floods. So with that again, the water consumption changes. So we have to accompany all those facts to have better water supply management. Okay. So if we are unable to incorporate all these things, what will happen? Simply, we may not be able to cater the demand in future. Right? So that's simple as that. In order to cater the future demand, we need to incorporate all the possible changes in future. Right? So then we need to move to select a water source. Now we know how the demand calculations are done. So once you have the demand, what we can do is we can select our source. One main important fact is check the quality of water. So if you want to select a water source, you have to select a water source which is non-toxic and non-poisonous. If it is poisonous or toxic, then you can't use that water source for drinking purposes. Not only that, you have to consider the impurities and sediment concentrations as well. Because with the high impurities and with high sediment concentration, then you need to go for advanced techniques of purification. So that will make loss of public money. So we use public money and we need to responsible for that money. So we have to think all the aspects and we have to optimize everything. Right? If the water source is non-toxic or non-poisonous and good enough to select as a quality water, then you have to think of the quantity of water. Whether that river carries the required quantity of water in the present as well as in the future. How to do that? You have the demand, right? Now you have to check whether the river flow is capable of fulfilling that demand. So for that, you have to use some kind of rainfall runoff model to check whether the stream flow is sufficient enough to cater the future requirement, future quantity requirement. I will just briefly explain that. So first you have to have the future rainfall series. Otherwise, you may not be able to calculate the stream flow, right? So how to find the future rainfall series? So there are several techniques. Nowadays, we have several downscaling techniques. It can either be statistical or dynamic downscaling, whichever the means, you will be able to project the future rainfall. There are several general circulation models where you can download data and downscale to your region. So by using such kind of a method, you can have the rainfall series under the climate change conditions. There are several climate change conditions. Nowadays, we are using RCPs. Under whatever the suitable climate change condition for your area, you can have probable precipitation series in future, right? By using that probable precipitation series, you can run a rainfall runoff model for future. How can you run a rainfall runoff model for future? Can you just run a model? No, right? So first you need to calibrate and validate the model to ensure whether that model is performing well. So as the second step, you need to run the rainfall runoff model for past data. Generally, we have in our meteorological department, we have rainfall data, and we can find the runoff data from almost all the rivers from the Department of Irrigation. So by using those data, we can run a hydrological model like rainfall runoff model, right? So suppose you have 30 years data period. From that 30 years data, you can use 20 years data for calibration of the model and rest of the 10 years data for model validation. So it's something like that. So you can then compare the observed discharges of the river with your simulated data. Then you can visually observe as well as you can do the statistical checkings. So if the calibration is okay, then you have to check whether that parameters or the model is good enough to apply for any other period. So then you have to use 10 years or another 10, 15 years data for validation, right? So if that developed model perform well with the validation or the other period, then you can say this model is good enough to project for future. So then you can apply that model to project the future flow in the stream. However, in the high flow conditions, you will always succeed. But here your focus should go to the low flow conditions. Whether during the low flow conditions, whether that river capable of fulfilling our demand, right? We need to focus more on the low flow conditions to check whether that low flow condition is capable of fulfilling our demand in future, right? So if that is satisfied, then we can consider the other factors, right? Basically, first we need to consider the quality and then the quantity. If those two are okay, then we have to consider the other factors. Other factors need to be considered in order to locate your intake location. Once you select the source, you have to select the intake location. In order to select the intake location, you need to consider the geographic characteristics such as elevation of the intake location, topography of the intervention area, So when you consider the elevation of the intake, it should be kind of much upstream compared to the intervention area. Otherwise, you may have to spend a lot of money for take the head high, lift the water, pumping cost will be high. At the same time, your location should be, your intake location should be not only that, you need to consider your river bathymetry as well. During the dry period, sometimes left bank of the river is dry, whereas the right bank carries the water. So at that case, don't go for the left bank construction. You need to go for the right bank construction. Otherwise, you need to spend another lot of amount of money to take water from right bank side to left bank side, right? Yes, you need to consider all those practical conditions, right? So your intake should be in higher location, higher elevation or upstream elevation, and the location should be close enough to the intervention area, and also it should be either side of the river where the flow carries in the dry season. And also you need to consider the topography of the intervention area, because if you lay your pipelines along a steep slope, then your losses will be high, and also the velocity is high and the cavitations can be there. So you need to face a lot of problems. Therefore, you need to consider all these facts with better optimization. So you need to optimize elevation, location, and the topography of, or the pipe network distribution by considering all the practical cases, all the practical situations. Not only that, you need to consider the other water users as well. Upstream or the downstream, there can be many farmers, right? And also there can be hydropower intakes. In future, there can be drawdown of the water table, groundwater table, and there can be some salinity intrusions. I hope you all know that in the Ambatale intake, still we have the salinity problem, right? So we need to consider all those things in the planning stage. When we are planning and designing, we need to consider the possible consequences in future. Otherwise, you may have to spend a lot of public money to rectify those mistakes, right? So all these things need to be considered in the design and planning stages. Okay. So as you all know, finally, everything comes as cost. Somehow we have to optimize the cost. We have to minimize the cost. Minimizing does not mean use kind of low quality materials and end up with some output, right? You need to optimize everything to minimize the cost. That is why engineers are there. You can do that, right? You are the practicing engineers, so you can do the miracles. And when you go to a new water supply project, you can't apply the same techniques, the same arrangements to the new project as you applied in the previous project, because that is new project. The topography is different and the water requirement is different and all the other intakes are different. So you need to think freshly for your new construction, right? New design. So you can apply your basic knowledge on science and theories to practice. And you can create something different. Okay. So designing and management as well as planning is very important in the initial stage, and you have to think for your lifespan of the project. So I think Engineer Krishan, you can take over from here.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gauri. May I?
Stop there.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Again, I hope you have a good idea about this, the P&D pillar, what we were talking about. And I hope we had some kind of new new way of planning. I mean, new way, not, it's a kind of not new way, new dimension, I would say. The things what we need to consider in terms of considering the future sequences in terms of hydrological modeling and this kind of aspects. So this is something I think this is something new, and this is something we need to consider when we are planning and designing for the new schemes. Okay, with this, I will go for the second pillar when we are talking about what we are talking here, and the second pillar is the construction techniques. One second. Okay. Construction techniques. In the field of water supplying services, both in the initial stage and as well as during the O&M, different kind of construction activities can be there. So here we have list out a couple of activities related to the construction activities during the design, during the construction period, as well as during the O&M. It can be civil works, mechanical installations, cable laying, power supply requirements, steel erections. So whatever these activities, there are some techniques you need to know. Being practicing engineers, I mean, definitely you need to have the knowledge of the technology behind them, and definitely you need to know how to implement them. But apart from this, having a kind of techniques for certain activities, certain items is very important, which I'm going to explain here. So these are some pictures. Okay, let me explain the difference between the technology as well as the techniques. Here, technique is the way or the way we do, the way or the style of doing things. On the other hand, technology is it's a kind of use of scientific principles for getting certain objectives or applications of scientific principles behind the working of gadgets or kind of, yeah. So you need to have the knowledge on technology and its principles, which we will talk about under the fifth pillar. That is very important. You need to have the updated knowledge on the technology anyway. But techniques are developed based on the technological requirements. Different people use different techniques for using the same thing or gadget, but the function of the technology remains the same. Knowing the techniques are very important, especially in the construction works. Here, the construction means not only civil construction, but all the other installation as well. Let me explain with some illustrations, some examples. For example, in the pipe laying works, we know we need to, depending on the terrain, depending on the profile of the pipeline, the intended pipeline trace, we need to cut pipelines. When we need to cutting DI pipes, especially for the large diameters, it's not, I mean, you need to have some care on this, because not all the pipes are designed to cut as you want. There are some, I mean, in the large diameter pipes, they need to have the they have the tendency of deforming this shape, the rounded shape we wanted to have in the pipe. There can be, it can be deformed because it's kind of because of the self weight, also because how we handle it. This kind of deformations can be there. The socket end and the spigot end are usually good in shape always and within the allowable diameter range. So these two ends are, I mean, we don't have issues with them, because anyway we are going to use this socket and spigot for the connections. But if we are cutting in the center or somewhere around the pipe as we want, you need to make sure that pipe is designed for cutting. Because some manufacturers, they have mentioned that, I mean, they have developed some specific, okay, I mean, I would say kind of specific markings on the pipelines, which are built for field cuttings. It can be, there can be some letters depending on the manufacturer. It can be a kind of scissor mark or something like that, because these pipes are gauged throughout the length of the pipe. It has this allowable tolerance within the of the diameter throughout the length. Without that, if you cut here and there as you want, and after that you can fix it, it can, once probably you will damage the rubbering, or it will be ended up with a leak. So you need to know this, the way you do, how to do the pipe cutting, how to select the pipe for cutting, whether it is good for cutting or not. If the, even with this, the pipe allowed for cutting, once you cutting the probably the way you used to cut, or probably the way you handle the pipe, still it can be deformed even after this kind of cut. So you need to have certain techniques to re-round this shape. So depending on the manufacturers, you need to follow these instructions, but it basically the same for, I mean, if it is for the DI materials. So this kind of, this is one example. So when you're practicing the field, especially the young engineers who are in the field works, you need to have the understand, and you need to know what do you need to do if you have come across this kind of situation. I will go for another example. This is also very common in pipe laying. We are using nowadays a lot of PE pipelines, and we used to use butt joints. In the butt joints, when the proper joint is done, you can have an idea about, when the joint is done, about a visual inspection of the bead shape. When you make the butt joint, you can see this bead out externally. Okay, beads are there both externally internally, but the internal bead we cannot see. External bead we can see, but the shape of the bead, it will indicate to how good you have make this joint. For example, if you can see this picture, the V groove, it's all about the cross section of this joint. So the V groove, if it is uniform around the diameter, you can see, okay, okay, the joint has done properly, and you have, you don't have a leak basically, if all the other things goes well. On the other hand, there can be some non-uniform beads also. If you can see in the second picture on the left here, and the other picture on the right, on the first picture on the top right, and the second picture in the bottom left, you can see this kind of a small, I would say, non-uniform beads, but still it can be okay. But you can see this V groove need to be a little bit above the pipeline surface. It indicates, okay, that you have formed a proper cross section with a good bond between the two pipes. On the other hand, if you can see in the right side, you have some pictures also. If it is clear to you, this visual inspection is very important. I mean, if you have a kind of bead with a V groove close, I mean, has deep closer to the pipeline surface, it's better if you can remove that joint and redo the joint again, because if you let it like this and if you backfill and everything, and after you go for the pressure testing, and these are the joints, it is very probable leakages. I mean, these are the points with possible leakages. So you need to avoid this kind of things from the beginning. So this kind of inspection techniques, this kind of quality checking techniques, you need to know, especially the engineers in the field. Okay, now the third pillar. It's about operation and maintenance. That is very important pillar in the water supply scheme. So what do we have under the O&M? Operations. Basically, in the water supply service, the objective is supplying water in required quantity and the quality to the end users. So depending on your field, the end user may be changed, because at the beginning I explained the water supply can be public or industrial or irrigation, whatever, but we need to provide the required quantity with the required quality. So when it is for the public water supply, the regular water consumption, what we are talking here, it is a bit challenging, I know, because we are talking about most of these assets, the pipeline networks are coming under the third party properties like roads. So we need to take care about this kind of assets during the operations. Coming to the operations, the production and distribution, supplying and sales. I like here for the stressing the sales part also, because we are also, okay, if the production is there, there is a sales also. So we need to consider about the revenue. Revenue is there to, that is the run the business of water supply. You need to have some revenue for that also. So, however, regarding on the other hand, regarding the maintenance, it's very important part. This kind of when you are running this kind of network, the maintenance part is very important, because like I said before, all these treated water going along with pipeline networks, and which are built, which are laid under the roads and the public areas. So once there's a leak, you need to dig out on the road, dig on the roads and everything. All these water also going wasted, as well as the road surfaces and the public interruption, public inconvenience, everything is there. So appropriate preventive measures should be there to reduce this kind of losses. For example, you need to, properly place the valves of air valves, I would say, the other necessary pressure management equipments, say valves in the proper places to save the, to ensure the safety of the pipeline network during the operations. On the other hand, the people who's handling the network, they need to understand how to, even the small, like opening or closing the valve has to be done improperly, not a sudden opening or not a sudden closing, because it will also ultimately give more leakages to your network because of this kind of sudden water hammers. It is not coming in the fan, it will gradually develop this kind of leakages throughout your network. So these kind of small things, even they are small, it has to be considered during the maintenance. So on the other hand, you need to know where your water goes. This is very important. When you produce your water, you need to know how this water will be ended up in your network. Part can be anyway, the aim is going, the water should go to the customers. Okay, we have made a leakages. So we need to have an understand how the amount of water, how it is being distributed within these different kind of I would say users. That is why we need a kind of water audit. It is same like you have okay, at the you have your salary, and you need to know how you are going to spend the salary within the month. Or it's, if you have a company, you need to know how you spend your income throughout the year. It's a kind of auditing. So this is a kind of technical auditing. You ultimately, you know how you spend, how the water coming into your network has distributed among the users, as well as a part of leakages. What is the contribution? What is the amount of losses? What kind of losses? That is why we have this kind of tools like IVA water balance. So your network has to be developed to monitor this kind of losses and develop to monitor this kind of audits. If you have sufficient equipment and tools to understand how your water is consumed within the network, then you know what is the amount of revenue, what is the amount non-revenue water, and even inside the non-revenue water, what is the part lost as physical losses, what is the part goes for the apparent losses. So depending on these figures, you need to know, after that, to which category I need to pay more investment. If it is leakages, okay, then I need to invest for repairs. If it is for apparent losses, something like that, okay, I don't need to invest for repairs. My network is fairly okay, but management, proper management decision can be taken with the actual information. This is very important in the part of O&M. On the other hand, talking about the reduction of real losses, that is also we need to understand. Okay, the first thing you need to go, this is also a kind of IVA approach of reduction of real losses, the physical losses. First, you need to do the speed repairs. When you observe the leak, the first thing you need to do is quickly repair it. Then you need to go for the next step is, okay, without waiting leaks to be observed, you need to hunt for the leakages. So this is why we have to have this active leakage controlling, ALC. So ALC means you're not waiting until the leaks are reported. You are hunting for the leaks. That's why you need to have a kind of a program to leak location. First, leak detection. It is simply from the flow meter night flow analysis, and after that you need to find the leakages. It can be small at the beginning, but without letting it bigger over the time. If you can find the location and if you can do the reparation at the very beginning, it will save a lot of water. And the third, if you have implemented both action 1, the short-term speed and quality repairs, and the action 2, active leakage control, then now you can think of, okay, whether we have any thing to do reduce the leakages. It can be pressure regulation, pressure management, probably in the night time you using a kind of pressure reducing valve. So this kind of pressure modifications you can introduce to the network, still catering to the demand even at the night. So these kind of steps you can think after this kind of active leakage program, and as the action number 3. At last, then now you need to think about the asset management. So this is the IVA method, and which has been established after proper studies of the water supply scheme in the international level. So these are the steps, or these are the approaches we need to consider when we need to reduce the physical losses, and you need to understand the economic level also. If you need to invest all your money and after that you cannot recover them even after repairing the leakages, then you don't need to spend up to that much. So these are the techniques and these are the things you need to consider in the part inside your ONM. So in aqua faculty, we are teaching and we are coaching for this kind of exercises. I mean, okay, we are doing more theoretical and sessions also. We talk about fundamentals also, but we are more interested on giving this kind of practical aspects, because these are the real day-to-day engineering things that we need to know in terms of water supplying services. It can be construction, it can be P&D, it can be ONM. At different stages, you need to have this kind of practical things, and you need to excel this kind of techniques in order to do certain creative and different things, and you need to upgrade the level of service. Okay, I will the same like it's the approach for the apparent losses, but for the moment, since we are running out of time, I will go to the next slide, the next pillar, the management skills. Okay, now we have three pillars which are technical pillars. We call technical pillars, which are interrelated: the P&D, the construction techniques, and the ONM. So now you have all these technical pillars, okay, but is that enough? No, you need to have some management skills, because if you have only the technical skills, it will not help. You need to be success in your water supplying service. For example, now you have targets given in your job. You have to work with people. It can be customers, peers, subordinate, your bosses, and the service providers, stakeholders, and you need to work with the material you have. You have some budget restrictions. Definitely everywhere you have this, and you have some time frame. You need to still, even with all these things, you need to produce a quality output. Okay, apart from your job, you have your friends and families, your personal objectives, your career development. So being engineers, you need to manage all these things. That is a part of life anyway. You can't say, okay, I have this kind of things, okay, because of that I cannot marry, or I cannot go for my parents' well-being, or I need to look after my parents, so I cannot do my job. You can't tell that. If you want to be success, you need to manage these things, because everyone has these kind of problems. It's not only for you. So we need to have some management skills which we need to develop continuously, and somehow we need to able to manage all these problems you have. Let me explain. Suppose now you need to develop a kind of scheme, or you need to give a kind of new connection, whatever the things, but with the present setup, you need to convince, it can be to your superiors, or it can be to a political party or somewhere. But skills, you need to have some enough justifications to present that your proposals, and it has to be a good proposal, and it has to be, you should have to have the ability to present and convince them why you need to take this decision. Okay, you need to convince them. To do that, you have to have a good management skills, which I call communication skills in this example. It can be a presentation, it can be a negotiation, it can be a kind of report writing, whatever. You should have to have a good, all these combined communication skills, and you need to have your language proficiency as well. You need to have some organization skills, and you need to anticipate some risk management. So these are a lot of things you need to develop within you in order to manage all these things together. On the other hand, this kind of skills will definitely put you in the success end. because if you only tackle with this what I call these technical matters, and after that still if you cannot convince the people who will allow you to do the job, and you will not be success, and you have all your proposal in your drawer. It's not the way. You need to convince and you need to show them how far we can go with this kind of proposals. It's one example. The last pillar we are talking here, the toolbox. This is very important pillar you should have to have with you. A toolbox should be ready to use anyway. It has to be updated. Like all the other toolbox, if you have tools, but if you can't use, then it's like you don't have a toolbox. As a toolbox, the tool should be polished, tool should be ready to use, tool should be properly maintained. So what are the tools what we are talking here, which where the engineers has to having with the tools? First, very important thing, common sense. When you are practicing, when you are an engineer, you have to have the common sense. It is very important in all the aspects. And the other thing is continuously updated knowledge on technology. This is very important. The technological updates are there every day. It is being updated. So you need to be vigilant and you need to be updated. At least within the field you are working, you need to understand, okay, what are the technologies available, and after that you need to know how to grab them to your field of works. And the other thing is knowledge of handling and operation of equipments and machineries you are working with. This is very important. It can be a construction site, it can be office work, it can be a kind of O&M works. So still we are working with some other equipments. So you need to have sufficient knowledge to work with this kind of equipments and machineries, so that you know how to get the use of, get the maximum of use of this equipment, because this is part of our job. And the other important tools are the software packages. This is also very important. Everyone now, we know we are working with a lot of different tools like AutoCAD, like GIS, even like common presentational formats like MS Office. And the other things, specific tools for design or planning, the WaterGems or EPANET, structural software, a lot of things. But if you have a thorough knowledge of this kind of tools, it's very easy, and you know how to go with this kind of things. So this is very important pillar you should have to have within you if you want to become a successful water supply engineer. So okay, with this, now we have come across with the 5 pillars which we believe to having with you to become a successful water engineer. I have a small narration here. A ship in a harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. This is told by John Augustus Shedden, an American professor and American author. But it is very interesting, and if you see this, if a ship is in the harbor, you can see you don't have any risk, you don't have any turbulence, because you have the breakwater, you have the shallow water and everything. It is very safe. But ship is built, you need to sail, you need to face the turbulence, and you need to have this kind of all this turbulence in the sail. So that is what ships are built for. So that is my message to the engineers, especially the junior engineers. You need to go above the comfort zone, you need to get into the field, and you need to face all this turbulence during, at least within your initial years of career, because these turbulences will definitely grow you with some experience and with all the knowledge you need to have to be you need to have with you if you want to become a good engineer with a good career. So this is the message we have here. And with this, we can move for the Q&A session. Engineer Dharaka.
Yes, thank you, Engineer Kishan and Dr. Tanuja Gowri. Actually, it's very interesting session we had with you now. I saw many challenging questions are also coming. Hope you can answer for that. Before that, I can see Engineer Mohammed Rafiz has raised your hands. Are you willing to forward the question?
Yeah, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, you can.
So ask. Yeah, regarding the slide, Dr. Kishan mentioned that during the night time there is a high pressure. For the domestic level, at home level, I face a problem that there is a high pressure during the night time and it's giving a loud sound also. To avoid that things, the best option in the home level for people to use the tank to pump the water from the pipe-borne supply water with reduced pressure. It is not the best option. So what is the decision, what kind of measures at the home level consumer can avoid this kind of problem or manage this problem at the home level, high pressure?
Are you clear?
I mean, if I get it correctly, I mean, maybe Mr. Mohammed Rafiz can correct me. You are raising a question having a high pressure in your house connection, is it? Am I correct?
House connection, yes.
Okay. So it can be, I mean, if this is the high pressure situation, I'm sure it is not only for you, maybe your neighbors also, if it is connected to a kind of the public water network. Okay, if we need to go for a solution, a domestic level solution, okay, using a PRV, I mean, PRV having a domestic level pressure reducing valve, you need to have some study about this because putting up a PRV will not, I mean, of course it will help you a bit, but my suggestion is, rather than going for this kind of individual solutions, it is basically better to go with the solution with the water board. I mean, if they can find the proper place to put up the valve for the if it is related to the elevation, and if it is definitely the answer is the putting up the pressure reducing valve, that is the solution. I mean, rather than put up an individual pressure reducing valve, because domestic level pressure reducing valve, I mean, you have this kind of mechanical valves. I have seen them in the market, but it will help you a bit if you really need to have some consumption even during the night time. But are you having this problem throughout the day also? Any idea about the pressure?
Yeah, sometimes the day also the same problem face. After that, the particular
because
room and some areas, certain areas, I diverted the PRV to reduce. But for the tank connection, as it is from the supply, it goes up. So it kind of difficult things as an engineer, I can solve it. But as the domestic public, how they can overcome such things without the network? Is there any pressurized valve for particular area or zone? It best, but in the home level, the ordinary person, how they can overcome such problem in Sri Lanka, especially in the hilly area.
Yeah, that is why I proposed this kind of solution has to be given into the network, not only to the individual connections. I mean, putting up an individual pressure reducing valve to the domestic network, it is not good, the proper solution for this. In fact, for me, it has to be go to the network level.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know whether I'm Sarat Gamini. May I ask a couple of questions?
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
Okay, yeah. Right. For our university lecturer, madam, regarding the demand projections, my issue is growth rate, migration trend. In water board, the whole island, 11% consumers, zero consumption. There are consumers, they are not getting water. 11% they are not consuming. What is the per capita consumption that you should put? And NRW percentage, non-renewable water, will it increase or decrease? Whether to put 25% or 35%. That is one thing. Other one is you, madam, propose about this hydrological model, runoff, rainfall runoff model. Most important part is accuracy. Do you think that irrigation department low flow stations are gauging stations are accurate? Accuracy is much more important. Prediction, everything depends on the accuracy of the data. Then planning process, most difficult part is water resource competent users, their demand, and how do you share it? There is sharing mechanism. Are we prepared to pay the compensation for that? These are the sector issues. Just for your comments, madam.
Yes, thank you for your questions and comments. So those are the actual practical problems. Even we have the doubt whether those data are correct or not, but still something is better than nothing. So that's why we need to rely on those data and so that's what I just wanted to focus and emphasize. So those practical difficulties are there. I completely agree with you. So and
Yes,
actually
Yes, Dr. Gauri, regarding Engineer Saratgami's questions, actually he raised regarding the very holistic approach, I think, in the drinking water sector. The common issues we are facing everywhere. I think Mr. Saratgami is the expert person.
Yeah.
I know he knows the answer also. I invite him to elaborate it here.
answer.
That is also.
Yes, he is expert than us.
Anyway, there are a lot of participants. That's what I thought. Yeah. It's not merely you cannot get the answers from computer packages. First thing, garbage in, garbage out. And sometimes we project demand 51,295 and 0.6 million per day. What a nonsense. So, so these are the things that I think our engineers should learn. We have to develop demands and scenarios, various scenarios with various assumptions, and sensitivity of those assumptions are very important. Then water resource in Sri Lanka, it's a failure that gauging stations are not established. And we don't have especially low flow frequency and the low flow values. And without any demand, without the reliability of the source, we have several problems. Then other one, I just want to say that you say velocity of the pipes and the steep slope. I think when it's completely different available potential, you can enlarge the pipe size and we can have a low velocity. Right? So what is available potential head? Either we can utilize keeping this manufacturer's high velocity criteria 2.6 meter per second maybe, and pumping mains of course it's completely different. It's economic evaluation to be done on selection of pipe diameter versus the total energy consumption and capital cost, etc. So the planning is a complex process. You need data, and you need to have a database in order to, as you madam mentioned, to give the long-term sustainability and value for money. I think that is enough for the day, Tarak.
Thank you, sir. I think engineer one
Thank you, sir.
from Candy also raised the same pattern question. I think most probably your answer also may be there. Unresolved questions and answers. Actually, I can give the chance to Mr. Jagat Rupasinghe. He's also ready to forward the question. Mr. Jagat?
Yes, I really appreciate the current trend of IESL and others doing this kind of knowledge sharing. So I would like to add that regarding the capacity, you need to consider firefighting capacity and commercial demand, and as well as there may be some other unanticipated developments happening. So engineers should need to foresee those additional demands and have a good communication with others to find future demand. It's not just residential demand. So that's one thing. The other thing I need to discuss is that selection of water supply source, always there should be considering economic evaluations and consider alternative sources as well in case of there can be something going wrong, and there should be alternative sources to find soon. So always there should be something should have thought prior at the planning stage. I like to highlight this, emphasize is that in Sri Lanka, there's a lack of considering disaster management on especially water supply is a lifeline service. So need to consider what happens if there's an earthquake or any other kind of disaster. So we need to consider that, especially when considering that welded joints. I think there should be some alternative solutions, something like rubber ring jointed type or flexible joints to allow ground movements, because ground we assume that it's all solid, but it's not really, because the ground is always moving, but we don't realize how much is that ground movements. So that's another thing we need to consider. At least those things should be, there should be some allowance in long pipe distribution at least. Then other one is that even constructing water supply towers should consider more earthquake resilience. I think considering vertical ground acceleration in case of at least yeah, there should be some discussion coming from IESL. I think involving and developing proper code of practice would help young engineers and all the system to have a better system. I just so need to improve the system, then that everyone would benefit, and then engineers can have more confidence with dealing with other people like planners, politicians, funders, all that will help with a good sound base, I think. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jagat. Engineer Kishan, you can add something.
Yes, regarding this pipeline network, designing from the designing stage also, we need to ensure the safety of the pipeline network. This is what we are highlighted, what we want to highlight. In fact, as Mr. Jagat said, this kind of from the joints, different type joints for this kind of allowing for certain settlements as well. Now, in the same time, I would like to mention one more thing regarding this kind of HDP joints. That is also one aspect we need to think, especially for the smaller diameters. When you have this butt fusion joints, you have this beading even in the inside. So this is not considered, in the smaller diameters like 63, DN63 or 90. So this bead is somewhere around 1 centimeter. If we are losing a little bit more than 1 centimeter of the beading of the cross section, for this kind of smaller diameter, it's a considerable loss So this is something we need to consider during the at least during the hydraulic modeling stage, or at least, I mean, there are certain things in the other countries. There are some of them are removing this internal beading by scrapping off, or otherwise for the smaller diameters, some countries they tend to use for the electrofusion couplings. So these are the things we need to, I mean, okay, about DN100, this is not so, I mean, the reduction of the cross section, it is not so significant, but 90 and the 63 diameters, this is something you will not predict during your modeling. So this is something we need to consider even during the, I mean, we need to discuss, I mean, if we are ready to spend some extra money for this kind of jointing, it can be electromagnetic electrofusion jointing, or it can be a kind of a mechanism to remove the internal bead from the after welding. So these are the these are also things to be considered in when you are developing a kind of network. And there are certain some newly formed, I mean, this kind of new dimensions also we need to consider with the development of the materials and other things.
Yes.
On asset management.
Yes, you can ask.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Kisan also mentioned about asset management. That's one important, very important aspect. My question is, how do you procure quality, long-term sustainable assets? Are we going by these famous two certificates? Quality assurance and the product conformity. So product conformity certificates are available.
Yeah.
You can, they produce pipes and fittings plus product conformity certificate also. So this is a challenge for engineers.
Yes,
This is
yes.
a challenge for the engineers. With this competition and various facts, openly tell it's subpar. And you know, they can give it a very low price for the pipe. Is it good quality? Mr. Kisan mentioned about the roundness of DI pipes. My God, you know, it has come to that level. You see, it has come to the level. And I'm pipe on the round. I used to tell. So now, how do we ensure quality? Are we going to measure putting go-no-go gauges everywhere? So this is a challenge for our engineers. My suggestion is we must go for end-user database, establish and pre-qualify the manufacturers for the water sector. There is no other way, because we cannot do hora police, you know, right? End of the day, they know how to get the payment. And it's a challenge, but we have to ensure we have to minimize the losses. We have to reduce the cost also, and repair leakages to be minimized. And water is very precise, and we have lack of water resource. We have issue, everything. Those are the issues. And on top of that, quality of the goods and services. Over to you.
So, I mean, one more thing, the reason why I introduced this, why I wanted to highlight this field cutting of the DI line, I mean, with my field experience, I have come across with several incidents, especially when we are going for the leak location and leak detection for the newly laid pipelines. I mean, you can't hardly see any deformation. I mean, you cannot see any defects or any physical wrong when you are seeing outside of the joint. But when you go, what is the cause of this reason? I found that in several locations, the contractors or the pipe laying people, they have cut when you are using cut pipelines. Okay, the manufacturers has sent the marked pipelines which are ready to cut at any locations. These are available. This is also available, but no one knows. No one knows this. There are some this kind of different pipes are there to cut. You cannot cut all the pipeline like we want. So without knowing that, they are just using this the same way with they are fixing. I mean, they are making the joints with the same way like they are using with the other pipelines. So this is one reason of this pressure testing failure. That is why I wanted to highlight that, because this is something we need to know. I mean, the engineers in the field, they need to know definitely. So there are these kind of things you should need to understand when you are working in the field.
Yes. Actually, yes, Dr. Gauri, yes, I know that you have another meeting. I have another one question from Dr. Gauri. Can you answer that when leave?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Actually, especially regarding the water supply planning, regarding water sources problem, we occur everywhere. We use salinity water for the Jaffna. And in some locations, we have insufficient water sources everywhere. But we know that one part of the country, we have enough water. And my idea is to why we can't prepare a good water resource inventory, and other way managing the demand centers based on the water resource inventory. Are there any research on this one, or are there any steps taken our policymakers and the people? What is your idea about that?
Actually, Dharak, I think still there's no such process, isn't it? Probably you may know better than me whether the processes are going on.
Yes, I also think so. That's why I asked your opinion regarding.
Actually, we can do that, isn't it? So we can have kind of collaboration, and maybe we can do something to improve our quality of the water resource identification and all that, and make a database. We have that kind of opportunity. So I think in future we can have kind of
policymakers
collaboration.
should think about that, no? Our policymakers and planners and
You
especially
should
engineers think about that.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gauri. If you have any some other scheduled meeting, I think you can definitely leave. But I can see one question is coming from Engineer Samit. Samit, do you have a question? Right.
Okay, Engineer Dharakash.
Yes.
Yeah. Shall I leave the meeting, sir, because I have another meeting?
Right. Thank you very much. Actually, our IESL KGOL District Center Chairman, our engineer Ladit Vijay Singh, is ready to do the vote of thanks. If you can't wait until his speech, I pay our gratitude to you for allowing your valuable time for our program, and thank you very much, madam. Hope your contribution in future also for our water sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me and giving this opportunity, and I had very nice evening with you all, and I also learned from you, and I think I have given some inputs to you as well, and thank you very much. So
thank you, Gauri.
Bye.
Right, now we came to the end part of our program. In absence of any questions, I think now we have to finish off our program, and I cordially invite our IESL Kegol District Center Chairman, Engineer Lalit Vijay Singha, to conduct the vote of thanks.
Good evening, all engineers. So we have concluded our third program, which is coordinated by our KEGO chapter of IESL. So today we talked about 5 pillars for success for water supply engineers. Now, water supply is a very important sector of civil engineering. Actually, not only civil engineering, it includes all the disciplines like electrical, mechanical, and civil engineering, and all aspects of engineering. Then it includes also management. So our resource person, Mr. Kishan, very clearly elaborated those aspects. We cannot become good engineers just by learning the engineering technology only. We need to learn management. We need to learn IT. We need to learn other aspects of engineering. Like if you are a civil engineer, you have to learn. You have to have a little bit of understanding of other aspects of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, etc. So our Mr. Kishan, Engineer Kishan, show us that aspect very clearly. So I appreciate the work done by Engineer Kishan on this sector. I have been working as a water supply engineer for 20 years, and I also learned many things from his contribution, and basically the management aspects and the new tools you can use to improve this sector. Then I like to thank Dr. Gauri for technical presentation. She did a good job in aspects of the planning and design and selecting water sources, that sector. We appreciate her speech and her contribution as members and the chairman of the IESL KEGO chapter. So I am very happy that today we had 72 participants, including my teacher, Professor Nandalal, and my senior engineers like Mr. Sarath Gamini and Mr. Prabodha Sena, and our President-elect, Mr. Dr. Kamal Laksiri also attended this meeting. So I am very happy. So we had a good crowd here. And last not but least, I mean, our KEGO chapter was struggling to conducting some programs and in this COVID period, and we found that this platform is a very useful to share our knowledge. So we are planning another session of the knowledge sharing that will be announced by Mr. Dharaka. So at last, I mean, I thank and appreciate everyone for sitting here with us, sharing your knowledge and listen to us, and wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President. And Dr. Kamal Laksiri, do you have to elaborate certain things?
No, thank you. Actually, I was following the presentation from the beginning. Engineer Sarath Gamini forwarded it to me. So anyway, it's very nice, very useful program, sharing the knowledge from the experts in the field, especially to the new engineers. So thank you very much, and I would like to thank the organizers for conducting this type of program. So in the future also you can do, and we will, from the headquarters, we'll extend the fullest cooperation. Thank you, Dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal Laksiri, for participating in this program, and our other prominent engineers also, Mr. Engineer Sarath Gamini, and all things. Thank you very much, and we'll have another successful program by another 2-3 weeks ahead. We'll come up with that. I think most probably concrete technology and related things. You all are welcome for that also. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kishan. Good night.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening for you all.
Well done, Daraka Kishan. Very good program. I really enjoyed, as Lakshmi says. Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Welcome.